Hello, and thank you for joining us. Tuesday marks the 100th day of President Trump's second term in office. That's 100 days of executive orders, sharp economic swings, and an all-out reshaping of the federal government. The president is marking the occasion with a rally in Michigan where he's highlighting what he sees as his top achievement so far.
This is the best, they say, 100-day start of any president in history, and everyone is saying it. We've just gotten started. You haven't even seen anything yet. It's all just kicking in.
Since January 20th, the president has signed a record 143 executive orders, the most of any president in that time frame. Many of these orders have focused on immigration, the economy, rolling back diversity initiatives, ending environmental regulations, and more. And we're going to take a closer look at all of these threads throughout the hour. 100 days in, CBS News polling finds the president's approval rating is 45%, while 55% of Americans disapprove. But Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller told CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cortez they, quote, categorically reject that, and added, quote, we saw the same fake polling during the campaign. Here's his response to Nancy's question of whether there were things they had been hoping they could get done in these first 100 days that proved to be too difficult.
Even my wildest dreams, ambitions, and hopes were exceeded these first 100 days in terms of what even I thought would be possible in such a short time frame. Resetting our global trading relationships, as I mentioned, fully sealing and securing the southern border, getting control over a rogue federal bureaucracy, and restoring presidential control over the executive branch.
We have CBS News team coverage on this presidential milestone. Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett and White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi are at our D.C. bureau. Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady is with me on set, and Justice Department correspondent Scott MacFarlane is covering the sweeping changes at the DOJ. We're going to start with Major Garrett and Olivia Rinaldi. So, Major, the president and his administration are leaning hard into this milestone, but the president himself has said some of his most significant moves, tariffs, will only provide relief for Americans in the long term. So how is he measuring up with the American people as we sit here today?
So the poll numbers in the last 2 weeks have been down. They started higher than they did in the first Trump administration, so they've slid, but they're not as far down as they were at this stage of the first Trump presidency. There was some give in that line, in other words. And the president has done what an executive can do who wants to command and assert maximum executive power authority. But as the president said today on the South Lawn of the White House, boarding Marine One, heading to Michigan for his rally tonight, the next phase of his presidency is all legislative. When you get to the actual congressional approval of his existing tax cuts, the ones passed in 2017, and the aspirational ones from the campaign trail, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security benefits, and deep reductions in spending at the federal level, more spending on immigration, more spending on defense, all of those things have political and policy complexities of their own. And the president needs to rely on Republicans to back him up and back him up nearly 100% in order to pass that. That is the next acid test of this administration. Don't believe me. The president himself said it this afternoon.
I want to circle back to that in a second. Olivia, why mark his first 100 days in Michigan?
Well, Lindsay, this is a state that Trump won in 2016, lost in 2020, and won again in 2024. It's the last state he visited on election night 2024. A 2 a.m. rally in Grand Rapids. I was there. It was late night. And he also rallied at this same exact area, Macomb County, on the final days of the campaign. This is a crucial area, the Detroit suburbs. And we can't underscore enough what happened today out of the White House, that executive order on the auto tariffs that Trump was putting in place. So these were the tariffs, as you'll remember, that 25% tariff that's still in place to go into effect on Saturday on any automobiles purchased from a foreign car company. Those are still set to go into effect, but Trump today delivered some relief to the automakers, those big three, Ford, Stellantis, and General Motors, saying that they're not going to be stacked for, any other tariffs, meaning that they're not going to have to pay for the steel and aluminum tariffs that will go into the car. So giving them some relief today. That's what he's going to tout when he's there later today, saying to these folks, look, what I'm doing with this tariff program is bringing jobs back to America, revitalizing all of these factories that you see around you that are decaying. And I'm trying to help restore the car industry in an area that this was once the economic backbone, where it deteriorated so much, where we saw a recession in 2008, and they looked for something different in 2016, 2020, and 2024. This is Trump saying, I'm coming home, I'm helping you, and believe in me, this is the first 100 days, and we still have a long way to go.
Major, when it comes to the president's relationship with congressional Republicans, we know that they have, by and large, had his back. There have been some cracks, but very slight. What are you watching in the next days and weeks ahead to see how those relationships progress?
So the MAGA base is still very much with President Trump. Our new CBS News polling shows 70% of those who voted for President Trump in 2024 believe the economy is getting better. Whether it is or it isn't, they believe it's getting better. And that's solid for Republicans. That's something that they can lean on in tough political times, which they may be heading into. When I talk to Republican senators and Republican members of the House, they sort of describe it this way, Lindsay. Mr. President, please stop talking about Canada, Greenland, Panama Canal, all that stuff. Don't talk about buying Gaza. Just for the love of God, focus on tax cuts, regulatory reform, and how those things will be central to your future economic success. When you talk about that, not just the Republican base, but lots of lightly attached, potentially Trumpian independents come back to you. Help us with that, Mr. President. Don't get diverted. Reinforce what we're trying to accomplish legislatively. If you do that, Republicans and Trump will be very closely aligned. If they don't, it'll be much more difficult.
Major Garrett and Olivia Rinaldi, thanks so much. Both the U.S. and global economies have shifted during President Trump's first 100 days in office. Since the last day of trading before Trump's inauguration, the Dow Jones has fallen 6.8%, the S&P 500 has fallen 7.3%, and the Nasdaq has fallen 11%. The market closed in the green across the board Tuesday as investors await progress on foreign trade deal negotiations in the wake of tariffs. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins us now to break it all down. So what do these 4-month market losses and market swings mean for the average 401k or retirement plan?
Well, I mean, it hasn't been good, right? If you're looking at your 401k, it's come back in the past week a little bit. But as you said, we are still down significantly from where we were. I mean, the past couple of months, we have seen some of the biggest single day losses in history. We also saw, a single biggest positive in terms of, where the Dow landed. But look, investors are uncertain right now. And it's not just stocks. It's also the bond market. It's also the value of the dollar. And I highlight those pieces because those are integral to the American dream, owning a home. That impacts mortgage rates because when investors don't have confidence in the U.S. economy and they are not incentivized to buy U.S. assets, they need a better interest rate to invest, and that's what drives your mortgage rates up. So it's not just 401ks. It's also folks who are looking at sort of the immediate future and saying, wow, I want to buy a house, but it just got harder.
Inflation has fallen slightly since the president took office, moving closer to that 2% target that the Fed has. What's driving that, and where do experts believe it's headed?
So inflation has definitely been a positive mark for the president. It was at 3%. It's down to 2.4%. And that is driven by energy prices. We have seen energy prices fall over the past couple of months. And that's really what's driving that getting closer and closer to the Fed's 2% target. The question is, what comes next? Because all of these policies, when it comes to trade, we know that businesses, they're already telling us they're going to pass those price increases on to the consumer when it comes to the tariffs. And so that, every economist I am saying, that's going to impact inflation. You are going to see inflation tick back up, and that gets further and further away from the Fed's 2% target.
What are you seeing when it comes to consumer confidence?
It's not good. So we got new numbers today. We are at the lowest level on the overall consumer confidence since May of 2020, just a few months into COVID. When you strip out the expectations index, where people think the economy is going over the next 12 months, lowest we've seen since October of 2011. And there's one piece that I'm sort of laser focused on because the job market has held up relatively well, right? That's also been a bright spot. This report people felt that the labor market unemployment was going to fall. 32% of them over the next 6 months expect less employment. And that is a number we haven't seen since April of 2009. That was in the Great Recession. So it just sort of gives you a sense of how people feel.
Okay, Kelly O'Grady, thank you. From day one, President Trump has sought to reshape the Department of Justice as we know it. During his inaugural address, he promised to end the so-called weaponization of justice. You'll remember as a candidate, he ran with 2 federal indictments against him. Both of those cases were dropped before he took office over long-standing DOJ policy that bars the prosecution of a sitting president. The president's frustration with the DOJ is a shared sentiment among the individuals he has tapped to lead a powerful agency. Attorney General Pam Bondi Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and FBI Director Kash Patel. CBS News Justice correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us. Scott, how would you characterize the new mindset of this Justice Department?
Well, there are new people in charge, and that's no surprise when an administration turns over. In this case, the top officials in this Department of Justice happen to be lawyers who represented President Trump before he won his second term. Pam Bondi defended him in his first impeachment trial at the U.S. Senate. The Deputy Attorney General, the number 3 official, the Solicitor General, other top advisors once served as personal lawyers for President Trump, which critics say may break down some of the independence that the department has traditionally had with the presidents. That being said, this 100 days by so many people and so many critics of the president can be measured in just the first 100 hours, because what happened on that first night after the inauguration was a transcendent moment for any president. The pardoning of 1,500-plus U.S. Capitol riot defendants, hundreds of whom admitted assaulting police. And in short order, Trump's loyalists in the agency fired prosecutors who handled this case, who did the job assigned to them. One of the prosecutors who handled January 6 cases is a man named Brendan Ballou, who resigned his post shortly after the inauguration, sensing the trajectory was not what he wanted to stay for. Here's more of our interview with Brendan Ballou.
So many of the prosecutors who handled those riot cases were fired or pressed to leave. What should we make of that?
It means that the goal here is to rewrite the history of January 6. There are an enormous number of politicians whose whole careers now depend on that day being forgotten, because if it's remembered, people will realize they are supporting a president that tried to incite an insurrection and overthrow the peaceful democratic transfer of power. And so there's a concerted effort by these folks to make sure that that history is forgotten, and firing those prosecutors is part of that effort.
And the president has referred to January 6 defendants as political prisoners. So have his allies and loyalists. But it's worth noting what Mr. Ballou says there, Lindsay, because it was a transcendent moment internally inside the Department of Justice that first night, which really set a course for the first 100 days.
Scott, you have reported that the DOJ is canceling federal grants for programs dealing with hate crimes, child abuse, refugees. What can you tell us?
360-plus federal grant programs have been halted. All but 2 remain halted. These are programs that help victims' organizations, nonprofits across the country, from Memphis to New Orleans, Los Angeles, San Francisco to Baltimore to Boston. Included in these programs, Lindsay, are nonprofits who help prevent hate crimes, school violence, who deal with victims of child sex abuse, trafficking, refugees, elder abuse, rural crimes. And these programs have been cut off as of last Tuesday, a week ago today. Some of the groups are appealing, trying to get their money back, but the Department of Justice told the groups that those programs no longer effectuate the priorities of the administration. The Department of Justice told CBS News a similar message, that this is not consistent with the administration's priorities, and they're focused on things that directly help victims and directly reduce crime.
Scott MacFarlane, thank you.